who is to tell you what success looks like? That's my biggest question to anyone. You tell me what success is, and I can point you to 100 different people that would disagree with you.
Hello, and you're with Aveline Clark on the 6-Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations about what it takes to be 6-star as a 6-star leader in a 6-star business in a 6-star world. And in today's episode, my co-host is Corey Sebest, and we sat down with Craig Fearn from the UK, who shared with us a horrific journey of suffering, of learning, and has brought everything to the table in order to share. I guess through that journey of pain, that suffering that he has been through and continues to go through today, he has a perspective and a knowing about and a respect for humanity. And that's what he brings into the work he does today and the vision that he sees for our future moving forward. It's a very interesting conversation and hopefully one that you'll feel grateful for by the end of it, like Corey and I were. This is definitely one of those episodes that will have you thinking about it long after you've finished listening. So sit back and enjoy our conversation with Craig Fearn. Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much. Here we are on the 6-Star Business Podcast, another episode. I'm here with my co-host today, Corey. How are you, Corey?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me back. Always pleasure.
Indeed. And our guest is Craig Fearn. Craig, it's so lovely to have you with us today.
Thanks ever so much for having
me. Wonderful. Well, let's get this show started. We like to ask our guests some questions so we can get to know you a bit. Would you mind telling us where you are in the world, who you serve, how you serve them, and maybe something you like to do when you're not busy serving people?
Cool. So I'm based in the UK, in a little part right down the bottom before you fall into the sea, called Cornwall. We are predominantly a farming, fishing community. We've just about got broadband, which is great. But we're a very sort of close knit, family valued sort of place of the UK. So that's cool. I'm born and bred. I didn't move here. I was born here, and I've sort of conducted business from here for my entire life. I serve businesses and individuals within businesses from a mental wellbeing perspective. So I work with businesses to work out what's going wrong from a mental wellbeing point of view. I work predominantly from a sort of strategical approach rather than a sort of initiative based approach. And I do work sort of one-to-one with senior leaders, directors, C-suite managers on themselves, because it's a very lonely place to be, and it's sort of that loneliness isn't something that everybody identifies with, especially when they look to the top of a business. What they normally see is the paycheck that comes with it. They don't actually understand, to a certain extent, the pressures and problems that these type of individuals deal with. What I do when I'm not serving people, well, I like to snorkel. So I'm about 10 miles from either coast in Cornwall. So I go out snorkeling with my son quite a lot. And if I'm not snorkeling, if the sun ever shines in the UK, I spend a lot of time in my hammock, which is my happy place, and I sort of sit there and watch the wildlife attack me as I I sort of rock backwards and forwards. So yeah, that's my I would say that's about right.
Nice. I've got a visual of you lying in that hammock and just ignoring all the bugs. But do you have flies? Here in Australia, we have
bugs are a problem. my house backs out onto farmland. Um, we have often cows walking around. We ended up with a cow in our backyard once, which was quite interesting. We called the police, who told us to let it out into the front, so presumably it could trample everybody else's front yard, which was interesting. So we ended up having to get the farm around and sort of get the cow out the back. But we could never understand how it got in. It kind of walked up an inclined wall, and then when it got to the top, it kind of tipped itself into our back garden. And you never quite realise how big these things are until you're trying to get them out of your backyard, and they don't want to go. And then I had to spend like 2 days cleaning up the mess that it made, and it was an interesting experience, especially when you're ringing the local police and saying I've got a cow loose in my backyard. It's not something that many police forces in the UK kind of deal with. But lo and behold, down here it's not as unusual as you might think. So they were straight away really concerned, and just told me to let it loose near everyone's cars and everything else. So yes, it's a great place to live. It's a wonderful place to live, but not necessarily a fantastic place to work.
And how often do you break out? Go back into kind of more civilized areas like London or Birmingham
So the
or whatever it
majority of my
is?
business is based in big cities and around the world. So I work with Australian businesses. I work with European businesses. I work with American businesses, and they're all very, very different in the way that they sort of do business to a certain extent. Um, the pandemic, the internet, things on these sorts of lines have changed the way I work. I don't get flown to wonderfully hot, fantastic locations anymore for a bit of a holiday. Um, they tend to just tell me to get up at 3 in the morning and talk to them over the internet. Which it certainly saves the environment in my travel miles. I'll go that far, but it's not quite as exciting as getting on a plane and being sort of flown over to Brisbane or Melbourne or somewhere like that and spending a couple of weeks with a business. It also sort of restricts that personal interaction because you are speaking one to one, but you're not in the same room as somebody else. So there is a slight difference in the way business is currently done. And it's also for me opened up a big can of worms in terms of everyone and their car has become an expert, and they became an expert in like 2 weeks in their subject, and then they put themselves all over social media because they've now realised they can broadcast to the world, and the water becomes exceptionally murky and muddy, which makes it a really difficult task for business owners who are looking for certain solutions to find the right people and the best people to do what they need them to do and cut through all the noise that's out there 24/7, about people who are promising these really quick hit, quick fix, everything will be sorted for you tomorrow. This has become, it's very sad because it's sort of, business owners are looking for ways that are cost effective to provide solutions for problems. And if they don't necessarily understand the space or what's going on, they can be seduced by, these very sort of very loud, very prominent, very over positive individuals who, if the sun's shining, then everything in the world is absolutely perfect, kind of thing. Um, because that's the nature of sort of what we want. We want this instant gratification, and we want to think that we've made a difference very, very fast. Whereas normally, if you were to ask any other person coming into a business how they do their job, there would be a strategy involved. They'd need to work out what was going on in the business. They'd need to find out how the staff were reacting, how the management were reacting, how these things all interplayed with each other, and then make some recommendations. But for some reason, business hasn't made that connection yet between well-being and staff well-being being able to be looked at in the same way. I saw a really fantastic quote the other day in an article that basically said, "I've never known anyone be able to mindfulness or yoga themselves out of bankruptcy." And it sort of and that was from a well-known sort of think tank medical institution in Australia. And it's true. People are these are the types of things that people are all within business are presented with every single day. We can do this for you. We can do that for you. We can do this for you. And as part of a strategy, that's absolutely brilliant. But unless you understand the strategy you're taking, the direction you're going, how you're going to get there, how long it's going to take you, what you're going to do along the way, the sort of the risk is that you sort of do one or two of these things, so you can tick that box to say that you've done something, but actually you've not fixed the root cause. It's like putting that proverbial band-aid over a broken leg. Yes, you've done something, but is it necessarily the right thing to do?
So, Craig, what I'm hearing from you is a depth of experience and wisdom in your field, clearly, because you can, call out the competitive wannabes, really, and it's not just hypey talk and a few mantras, basically. What I'm really interested in hearing from you is maybe a bit of your journey that's brought you to this place now of really knowing what works and what doesn't work.
I think there are certainly my story isn't probably the most straightforward of anyone who's come into this space. I think there are different places where you can obtain expertise. I think there are academic expertise, so you can go out and you can study a topic, you can read lots of the literature. There's practical expertise where you're going and putting things into practice in what you're doing. And then there's experiential expertise. And those are the individuals that have lived or have experience of what it is they're talking about. So what I've tried to do with my life is cover off all of these particular elements. Not through choice, unfortunately. And I suppose the direction that I took with my life was kind of governed by having experience of certain issues and problems. So, from about the age of 12, I would say I've suffered from depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. I'm of an age where that was the most ridiculous thing anyone could ever say when they were 12 years of age. It was impossible. These things didn't exist for adults, so how on earth could they possibly exist for children? I was in the very fortunate position that my parents sent me to a private school in the UK. But I grew up on a council estate in Cornwall, very high area of deprivation. Not a lot of money kicking around. My father used to work, or still works, in the local dockyard. My mother was a dinner lady, so we didn't come from massive financial stability. It was always a very difficult journey to put food on the table, and me being sent off to private school was a huge thing. A lot of money was being spent on sending me there, and I hated it. I hated every single second. And it wasn't the school. The school was a lovely place that had fantastic opportunities. I just felt massively out of place. I was the kid who was going in the second-hand blazers, the second-hand clothes. If we could afford the newer stuff, it was because my grandparents had helped us out, or whatever the case might be. And I had this real problem with my own self-worth, because all of my peers, or the majority of my peers, came from affluent backgrounds, and that was my problem. It wasn't theirs. They weren't marching up to me all the time, waving pound notes or whatever the case might be. But I had a real sort of, hang on a minute. There was a stigma attached to what I was. I didn't speak like them. I didn't walk like them. I didn't use the words that they used early on in my sort of school life. And from that point forward, it kind of set the tone for me at school. I played sport. I was good at sport, and that was my sort of area where I took back some control of my own life. I lashed out very much when I was in my sort of 14, 15, coming up to my sort of GCSE period, because I just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like I should be there. Academically, I was okay. I wasn't brilliant, but then again, everybody else there was. So, effectively, I could have been the best that I could possibly be, but I would still be below everybody else, because that was the nature of the school I went to. And again, it's not the school's fault. The school did everything the way it should. The teachers were great. It was me. It was an internal thing. And I would worry every day about going in. I would not do my homework because I would panic about it wouldn't be any good. And of course, that would then lead me into trouble, which would then lead me to be labelled as a problem. And, it would just keep going round and round and round. I got to my exams. I did very, very poorly. I was the guy that was vomiting in the back of the exam hall because I got myself in such a state that I couldn't physically take the exam, or if I did take the exam, I would just be staring at a piece of paper for 2 hours, hoping that divine intervention would come along and write it for me. So I came out with what I came out with. Exam day was hell. I remember turning up, because at that point you used to turn up and you'd have all the grades up on the wall. And you'd go and you'd find your name, and it would have the grade next to it. So, of course, I'm going up, I'm looking to find my name, and I'm going A. Oh, ungraded, that must be mine. And, of course, all the other children and their parents are walking around in this loop. And I'm walking around in this loop with my father, who's just paid all this money to send me to this private school for 5 years. And it's sort of, A, B, A, D. Oh, that one must be mine then. Okay, we'll have that one. That was kind of my sort of experience coming through. And, I didn't really expect anything else at the time. I wasn't the best student. I lashed out all the time. I didn't want to be there. The only time I wanted to be there was when I was running around on a sports pitch. So I kind of left the school and moved on and floated around for a while, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Because it was quite difficult to move from a private school, which again came with a certain amount of stigma. So you would go and people would say, "Well, where did you go to school?" And it's like, "Oh, I went to the private school." And they're like, "Oh, you must be a genius." And it's like, "No." No, I'm not. So then you're getting the stigma on the other side of the equation. So when when I was in the estate, or I was at home during that time period, if I was going out to kick a ball with the guys on the estate or whatever else, it's like, "Oh, here comes the private school kid." And it's like, well, I can't win. If I'm going there, I'm getting, I've got this kind of stuff. If I'm going here, I'm getting this kind of stuff. And again, I don't think any of it was deliberate. I just think it was, the thing that happened. But to me, I was taking all of this in during my formative years. I was just loading myself up with all this negative self-worth, and don't know where I'm going, and I shouldn't have been here, and I was a burden to my parents because they'd spent all this money, and it just choked up. So yeah, I sort of I didn't really do a lot for a little while, trying to work out where I was, what was going on. So of course now I was the private school kid that was signing on the dole, um, which again is a really great thing. And in the I moved into the world of finance. Now I don't know how, and to this day I don't know how, what it was. You know, I was a kid with no qualifications. But clearly, you know, finance was quite happy to take a kid with no qualifications, and I've got to thank them for that. You know, that was a really positive move in my life at that time. And I studied and I worked my way up through. You know, took my financial advisor qualifications, and everything was going pretty well. Until one evening, I woke up with what I thought was brain hemorrhage, and was thrown in the back of an ambulance and taken to a local hospital, who did all these scans and everything else and said, "Well, there's nothing wrong with you," and sent me home. The next day, next night, roughly the same time, I woke up again. So it's like, well, if it's not a hemorrhage, it must be a tumour. Here we go. So I was sent over for a new barrage of tests, went through, did all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Can't find anything, send him home. And this repeated itself for about a month. So every evening I was being rushed by ambulance into my local hospital because of this pain in my head, going through all these scans, all these tests, and then I was being sort of released at sort of, you know, midday the next day, which of course was impacting on my ability to work because I wasn't leaving the hospital until sort of 12, 1 o'clock. And we got to the end of sort of that month, and you know, I sat down with my bosses and everything else, and basically the options that were given to me were, you know, we're either going to manage you out sick or you can leave, because we can't afford to be carrying you because you're in a sales targeted role. So you know, we need a return on our investment, and you know, that was what the thing was. So I decided, you know, with everything that was going on, worrying about money, mortgage, all this kind of stuff, it's better for me to go under my own steam than to be managed out. Now, I don't know even today if that's right or wrong, but it's what I did, and that's the way it was. So I left, and then I sort of went into my own personal lockdown nightmare for about a year. I didn't come out of my house. I put on about 8 stone in weight. I used to eat nothing but pizza, basically. The pizza delivery guy and I became best mates, even though I never met him. I used to sort of put money in the door for him to take. My friends would come around for cups of tea. I'd hand them out through the window so they didn't come in and sort of see what had become of me. And I was ashamed. I was massively ashamed. At one point, I could have even, and this is probably for the British contingent, I don't know if it ever made its way over to Australia or into Europe, but we had a program called Jeremy Kyle, the Jeremy Kyle Show, which is just basically Jerry Springer, if you've ever watched Jerry Springer. And at one stage, my life had reached the point that I could tell you when every single episode or rerun started on all of the ITV channels in the UK. Which, you know, at that point, I kind of knew there might have been something wrong. And I started going in for counselling on the NHS. And I always remember my first counselling appointment. I remember going in, sitting down with a gent who was there. He turned around and said, "So, what's the problem?" Okay, where would you like me to start? And you know, I started talking to him about all these things. And the next question I got asked was, "How does that make you feel?" And you're like, pretty naff, if I'm honest, or else I doubt I'd be sat in front of you. But, you know, while I'm here, I may as well run with it. And he gave me a list of things to do, and he said, right, okay, I need you to do all this stuff and come back and see me next week. And on this list was take a 20-minute walk around your local park. And it's like, but I'm terrified of leaving my house. The only reason I'm here is because family have picked me up, driven me, and effectively sort of taken long pokers and poked me into your office. That's the only reason I've managed to get to you. So just turning around to me and saying, take 20 minutes to walk around your park, well, that's great as a generic piece of advice, as a one-size-fits-all solution. But I'm a little bit different to that because this is, and you've not actually spent the time to work out what you think would be best for me, and actually where we could target best to form some sort of plan. So I went back the following week, and the first question I was asked was, "So you fixed yet?" And I was like, no, not fixed. Did some of the stuff you asked me to do, but this is quite a deep-seated issue I have that I've carried my life, and this is the way it is. Okay, all right. We'll go away and do it all again, and come back and see me next week. And you're like, but I've just told you that some of this doesn't work. And there wasn't any sort of desire to change it up or sort of work out something more suitable. It was a very sort of, just go and do it. These are the guidelines. These are the tram lines. We work within these tram lines, but there's nothing on the other side of them. So effectively, if you stay walking down this path, you're fine. If you take a step on the, hang on, there could be anything out there. It's a really dark place, and that's kind of the impression I got. And I understand that people who qualify in certain things, you don't want a brain surgeon advising you on knee surgery. I get that. I understand that completely. But when we're sort of dealing with humans, I do sort of feel that you need to be a human as opposed to a textbook. And there are amazing counsellors out there that do amazing things for people, and approaches that work for me might not work for them, but what they're doing may work for someone else, and I get that completely. So I'm not here to be down on a profession in any way, but I found it very, very restrictive, and I found that certainly for me, when things didn't start to work, the ideas ran out very quickly because they were very used to sort of focusing in those tram lines. So I got to the end of my 5 weeks, which is what you get on the NHS, the UK, if you're lucky, 5 weeks. And we got to the end of the 5 weeks, and the guy turned around to me and he said, right, well, thanks for coming. It'd be lovely to meet you. Good luck with everything. And I went, nah. And he went, yeah, it's the end of your fifth. I was like, yeah, but I've just unpacked my life all over the floor. What do I do with it now? And so unfortunately, you only get a certain amount of sessions. I can put in a recommendation for you to get more sessions. But this is where it was. So that was my what happened to me. I know, again, it doesn't happen to everyone, but it did happen to me at that time. So I left, and I left with this attitude now. So I'd carried all this burden throughout my entire life, being a failure, sponging money, academically not good enough to be part of a private society, but not good enough to be part of the sort of public society. Got into finance, doing all right, but then ill through no fault of my own. So now not good enough to continue with that. Then going and seeking help, which is what you're told to do. And coming from, I'm not even good enough to be good at getting the help. And I left with the attitude that I was unfixable. and that there was nowhere for me to go. This was the way it was, and I attempted suicide. I attempted suicide within 2 days of my last counselling appointment. I wasn't successful, as you can see, and I decided at that point that I was even bad at attempting suicide. So I could really, literally do nothing right at that particular point. So I tried again, and didn't get that right either. But what it did do at that moment in time was it persuaded me that if I was so bad at taking my own life, maybe there was a reason that I wasn't doing it right. Or maybe there was a reason that, actually, maybe I didn't really want to. Maybe I thought I wanted to, but didn't actually want to. It sounds very trite. There are lots of people out there in different circumstances. But for me, I think it was that sort of, what, if I can only take half a step forward, that's still further forward than I was just now. And let's celebrate that half a step. It sounds nothing. You turn around, you talk to all these different people, and I had this epiphany moment, and the sun was shining, and the birds were singing, and I caught a whiff of a scent, and it was not like that for me at all. It was very raw, it was very base, and it was half a step is more than no step. And it's kind of the attitude that I've taken with my life from that point forward. As long as I'm still moving and I'm still moving in the right direction, then it's worth moving. The second I stop and, just let everything heap back on top of me, then, things get a bit hairy. So I decided, no, I was going to do something a bit. And over here in the UK, unless you've got a qualification, no one wants to know you. Especially from a work point of view, which is very unfortunate, but it has led to sort of upskilling and things taking place. But again, we're talking a good 20 years ago now. I decided, you know what, I need to do something about my life. And I decided I was going to build my own toolkit. And it wasn't going to be a toolkit for someone else. It wasn't going to be a one-size-fits-all. It wasn't going to be, I'm going to read 101 self-help books and this is going to change my life. It wasn't, I'm going to go back to counselling and all of a sudden it's going to be miles different to what it was when I went 3-4 months ago. It was a realisation that actually, I'm responsible for me and I have to take some responsibility for myself and not keep putting this onto everybody else and say, I am totally abdicating all responsibility for me. Now, there are times in our lives where we need help. And, I accept that we reach out and we abdicate that responsibility. But what we don't do is do it permanently 24/7 for every single thing. And that's kind of the place that I'd got. I was blaming everyone in the universe for where I was, what was going on. I was blaming myself for the way it had worked out. I was blaming the dog for lying the wrong way when I wanted him to lie a different way. And why are you in my seat when I've sort of come down to sit? I just got into that mindset. And effectively what I changed immediately was I started to build my own toolkit. So I went and managed to get another 5 sessions of counselling, but I started looking in other places for answers and things that would be useful. And I keep the bits that I liked and they worked for me, and I ditched the other bits because actually, the only thing I was invested in was me. So I was invested in me going forward and finding something for me. Now that might mean I don't do a full, the full X program or the full Y program, but it doesn't mean I don't see the benefit of certain areas of that. So effectively, I just stripped these things down and I was pulling bits all over the place, and I built my own toolkit. And then I decided I'm going to university. Yeah, not usually top of the list of things that people decide at that point in their life, but I flunked out all my qualifications. I really wasn't anywhere with anything. So it was like, well, what other time in your life are you going to have where you've got this opportunity, where you've got no responsibilities, you've got no, just go and do it, see what happens. So I went to my local uni, and it was hell. It was hell on earth because I had a physical disability. My headaches were, were later diagnosed as chronic cluster headaches. If you've never heard of them, look them up. They're thoroughly pleasant, and I'm sure you'll enjoy reading about them. And I have these every day of my life, and I still do, and have done for the last 20, 22, 23 years. They go on for about 3 hours every night, and they're supposed to be worse than having an amputation without anaesthetic. So, that was there. And of course,
Can you just compare it?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Can you compare it to the migraine, the level of intensity, so
Yeah,
people understand
basically
what it means?
the consultants say it's a migraine times 10. So, effectively, the other name for it is suicide headache because it has such a high percentage of people attempting suicides to stop the pain. There are examples where people have shot shotgun pellets into their head to get pain in a different area, so that it balances it out and things on the. I know people throw themselves down staircases and things to try and get different pain in different areas to forget about it. And no one knows what causes it, and no one knows how to fix it. So it's just one of these things. If you've got it, hard luck. If you haven't, good for you. As I said, I've now had it 20, 24 years, 25 years. So that's every day, 3 hours, 25 years. Again, that's more than a whole year in pain if you chunk it all up. I only did that because I'm helping a study in the Netherlands. So they asked me to work it out, and actually, for me, it works out at nearly 2 years of those 25 years. So 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, and that's 24 hours a day, not 12 hours. So that's an aside. So that I was living with that, but also living with the mental health issues as well. And those feelings of not being good enough, not being academic, all of them came flooding back. Now, universities are getting better at dealing with people with mental ill health, but back then it just wasn't. It was a thing. Universities are an institution; they do things a certain way, and they always have done. And as I said, they are improving along with society in general, but not at the pace that you would hope they would. But I graduated. I got my degree, and then I sort of went on and got some other bits and bobs qualification wise, and moved into university lecturing. So I ended up lecturing on the course that I'd passed from. And I also ended up course managing that particular course. And the great thing about it was I got to help people with what they call non-standard educational backgrounds. So these are people who ordinarily didn't get a shot first time round. So they're young single mothers who had their children before their education. They're people who got married early and invested everything in the marriage before educating themselves. They're people who were sent out to work by their families because they needed the money and they couldn't afford to put them through any sort of education, which was really, really rewarding. It was a fantastic opportunity to support some of these people on their journey. But it wasn't really something that was doing it for me. The bit that I loved the most was the sort of pastoral care that I was able to give these people. So it was about understanding their issues and then moving forward with how we could overcome those and allow them to continue to do what they needed to do. So I can always remember coming home to my wife one day and just saying, you know what, this job that I've been training for the last however many years, and I've cried about and screamed about and broken things over, and I've got this job that even my gran is proud to tell people I've got, because that's the thing over here. Your gran is normally the person that boasts most about the job that you do, especially if she understands it, which she currently doesn't understand what I do now. But back then, she understood I worked for university, so she would tell all of her mates and everything, oh, he works at a university. And a good pension and everything else. Yeah, all that. Yeah. I'm going to quit. What? I'm going to quit. What do you mean you're going to quit? No, I'm going to quit. It's not doing it for me. And thus started an evening's worth of, I will call them conversations, into exactly where I'd mislaid my brain. And at what point could we go and find it again? And had I actually gone through and written this letter already? So, yeah, it was an interesting 12 hours, because I don't think I slept that night. And if I did, it was probably on the settee downstairs with the dog. But at the end of it all, it was decided that I was going to do this. So I did. So I went in, handed my notice in, and I set up a company called Lighthouse Mentoring. And Lighthouse Mentoring predominantly was set up to help university level students who had mental ill health, and it was funded through some UK government projects. And finally, I started doing something that I was really enjoying. I was overcoming these issues with these people. I was treating them as individuals. They weren't numbers. They weren't tickets. They weren't statistics. They weren't paychecks. They weren't any. They were Jill, Bob, Ian, who were coming to see me, trying to find a way through these issues. And I was quite happily putting along with that when I got a call one day from a relatively large business saying, we've got somebody here who worked with you when he was a student. Do you think you could do what you do with business? And it was like, well, exactly what? What do you understand by what I do, and what do you need doing? And we had this big, long conversation about it. And I explained to him that everything I do works from a strategic point of view. So if I'm working with an individual and I'm identifying issues and problems, or whatever the case might be, we work strategically to overcome these issues. Now, we may have sort of the whole sort of quick hit bits that come along, and that's absolutely fine and great and whatever else. And he said, no, I don't want you to do that for my staff necessarily. I want you to do that for my business. And I was like, okay. So what we're saying is, you want me to treat your business as an individual, deconstruct it, reconstruct it, put a strategy in place so that by the end of X amount of time, your business will be better at this, and this. And he was like, yeah, do you think it can be done? Now, this was back before mental well-being was cool, in inverted commas. So, I was banging on business doors, and effectively they were setting the dogs on me and chasing me down the pathways and everything else. And I did. And I started doing this, and I started doing more and actually found that everything I was doing kind of complemented itself as I moved around in a circle. So the individual work complemented the work with the business individuals, which then, the student work to the business work to then the whole business as a sort of, round round circle. So I ended up going really, really heavily in the business direction because I think personally, we have the NHS in the UK, and the NHS is an amazing thing, absolutely incredible, envy of the world. Well, it was when we gave it money and it was able to do its job. But when you stop giving something money and still expect it to do the same thing, it kind of gets a bit dodgy. But business typically views the NHS as being the thing that fixes their people. So, there's very much been this culture of we pay you to work. That's what you earn your money for. You come in, you do your job, and you go home. That's what I pay you for. And while you're here, your time is mine because I'm paying you. And, effectively, that's the way it works. And if there's anything on the outside that's a problem, we pay national insurance, and that national insurance goes towards, and your tax goes towards paying for the NHS, and the NHS fixes it. Not us. We're not responsible for fixing that. That's the mentality that's been held for so long, especially in English business. In businesses around the world, it's a bit different because people don't have the NHS. America, for example, are very used to paying for their own care. In fact, in America, they compete to see who's got the most foreign-sounding therapist, because that's obviously a sign of them being good. I don't know, but that's kind of a thing. So you've got these culture issues and problems, and I actually found it a lot easier to make headway in businesses outside of the UK than I did businesses inside of the UK. But while I was doing that side of stuff as well, I was approached by the Institute for Directors in the UK to become their wellbeing ambassador. That doesn't involve oodles of chocolate, but it does involve me getting to speak to decision makers and people higher up in that tree. European Mentoring and Coaching Council, I'm a member of. I deal with drug and alcohol issues. But I've actually found that my specialism has really come in business transformation and dealing with senior manager, senior C-suite, and director level individuals. And I think that comes back from the whole story that I've probably bored you to tears with over the last 40 minutes. But it's that lived life experience plus book learning plus it's the complete package. And when you're talking about things, people can tell if you're authentic or not, and that's the big bit. It's all well and good getting up. I can quote you statistics until the cows come home on how important mental well-being is to business, and I have probably. I can see people laughing. Yes, you've already done this bit, but anyone can do it because it's all open source stuff. But I live it, and that's the difference. I sit in the middle of this every day, and I live it, and I see the consequences, and I see the blame game, and I see the numbers game, and I see the justification game, and I see all of these wonderful things where you go to a board and you say to the board you've got to invest in your staff, and the first person who pipes up on the board is the financial guy, and the financial guy turns around and says, "Well, what's my return on investment?" And you're like, it's a people argument, and this is where I was going wrong at the very beginning. So you turn around and you say it's a people argument. You should want to do this. This is a really important thing. But what you have to bear in mind is the board of directors' responsibility is to the shareholders of the company. They're their representatives on that company's. So, if I'm a shareholder, what's the most important thing to me? Well, it's whether I'm making any money out of my dividends and everything else that I've put my pension fund into X, Y, and Z. So what's my return on investment? That's always the first question. What is it going to mean? What do I have to spend? and what's my return on investment. And there are some amazing tools and everything else where you can actually sort of go, well, here you go, this is the type of thing. But for me, the computer tools never replace the individual, because the individual can actually go and poke in the dark corner and find out what's going on and go and speak to the secretary. Because if anyone's going to know anything, it's going to be the secretaries. Apart from the tea lady. If you've got a tea lady, the tea lady will definitely know everything that's going on in the office. But, you don't get the opportunity to have these real life conversations. Because if you're relying on data is only produced by people clicking buttons in these programs. And whilst on a real broad scale, it can give you a place to start, it's then about drilling further into this and trying to work out what the score is and going and talking to the people, funnily enough, who are the ones that are, and I keep coming back to the word people, but people seems to be removing itself so much from what's going on. And again, it's why I work so much with directors and C-suite, because they're people too. It's just that a lot of people don't understand. Lots of people look at the wage check and they go, oh, you're paid the big money to make these decisions. But actually, it's a really lonely, isolating place when you're having to make these decisions. Nobody comes into work in the morning to fire 500 people. That's not what they do. The actual impact on them internally of knowing the knock-on effects of all these types of things is absolutely massive. So and that in 50 minutes is my sort of journey to where I am now.
Wow. Well, it didn't feel like 40 minutes or whatever it was. Thank you so much for taking us on that journey, Craig. So appreciate your authenticity and vulnerability.
Thank you.
Craig, question to you.
Yeah.
You have been describing yourself as a kind of a drifter outlaw back when you have been 12, facing depression, and now you do the well-being in particular with director C-suite. So would you see yourself again as a kind of an outlaw who's going his own path while all the other counselors are doing their textbook reading, scripting stuff, and you just focus more on the people and do, despite of your toolkit you pulled together, yeah, you still do it intuitively because you really focus, you're laser focus, and you, rather than just facing the person, you're actually going deep into the psyche of individuals, understanding what are their fears, what they're facing, putting yourself into his shoes. Yeah, as you just mentioned, CEO firing 500 people. I think doing that is a horrible job, but I think the responsibility of a CEO is, if there is no chance he can go around it, yeah, by the pressure felt through the board, the shareholders who are on profit maximization. But what he can do, what very often CEOs don't do, is, if you need to lay off people, then at least give them a package, give them opportunities, give them channels they can reach out to. Yeah, so kind of outplacement center, all the things, but on a more individual base for his own people, because literally those people are making up the company, right? It's not the brand, it's the people behind it. So all you do, are you an outlaw in the well-being space? How you do the things, your memberships over there, how would you describe yourself?
I think an outlaw is a really good term. In true sort of Top Gun fashion, I prefer maverick. But it's for me, it's about, if I'm dealing with someone, the best people, the best people in my space are the people who are able to put themselves in the shoes and empathize with the individual, but not just leave it there. So the dangerous thing is to put yourself in someone else's shoes and then leave yourself in them while you're trying to work out a solution. Because ultimately, you only ever see things from one point of view, and you then start taking on the individual. you take on their persona, you take on, these types of things. So it's the ability to put yourself in their place, get as much as you possibly can intuitively, and through that empathetic interaction, which, by the way, I think is massively underrated. 90% of people I've come across in this, who have mental well-being issues or whatever, that we don't want sympathy. I don't want sympathy. Whenever people would come over to me and say, "Oh, mate, going through that must be absolute, and all this type, this male thing we do where we can't actually say the words, we replace them with grunts, and we're supposed to understand what that means, but it's that kind of thing, and we don't want that. I'd much prefer somebody to show empathy towards me and come to me and say, "Look, I cannot imagine any of this. But if you want to go and grab a coffee, more than happy to sit and listen." That does me absolutely fine. And from my point of view, when I'm dealing with people, immediately they sort of go into counselor debrief mode, where they tell their story in a very sort of robotic, oh, I do this, then that, da 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 da, and it's like, and it made me feel terrible, and it's like, look, I understand how it made you feel. I don't need you to sort of, convince me that it was really bad. I know it was really bad. I lived, I may not have done the same thing. I may not have gone the same path, but I know how I felt. And so from my point of view, the best people are the ones that can go in, get what they need, but then there's a step in between. So for me, there's this sort of cycle that takes place. So, there's you've been given whatever information or whatever the case might be. Most of the time you're not given anything, or you're told, person A, person B hate each other or whatever. You just don't know what the score is. And actually, so most of the time that's a good thing, because I don't need the extra baggage that comes with knowing, I just need to know what the situation is. And you go and you put yourself in the so there's you analytically looking at what's going, as an individual, telling people your story. So that's you. You then try and put yourself in their shoes, try and find out what's going on, how this is affecting them, what the score is, what they're having problems with, and that's the score there. Now at that point, the difficulty is that most people will try and problem solve. But you're problem solving while sitting in the shoes of the person whose problem you're trying to solve. So actually, it's totally the wrong place. So there's got to be a stage in between where you're coming out of their shoes into an analytical, how does this best work? And then you return to being you. So there's always that mid stage, and that's where so many people get caught out, is that, effectively, it's like when we put in place a mental health first aider or a well-being specialist or something like that. Now, mental health first aid for me is a fantastic awareness tool. I think it's one of the greatest things that's come out in a long time. I think there's a couple of misnomers to it. Number one, I don't see it as first aid. But, that's a slightly different conversation. I think the second thing about it is the mental health first aider being aware of where to draw the line, and the temptation for the caring individual, because let's face it, if you've gone and you've done a course on mental health, or you've done these types of things, you're not doing it because you hate people. You're doing it because you're a caring individual, you want to learn more about a topic, and you want to see if there's anything out there you could possibly do. Lots of people who do it are either, looking to work out what's going on with them, or they've got a family member or a friend or whatever else who has gone through, unfortunately, some mental wellbeing issues. And we put them, after sort of 2 days training, into this role where everyone comes to talk to them, and basically their job is to signpost and listen and signpost, listen and signpost. But this is where it gets complicated because, of course, what they're doing is they've got someone in front of them and they want to fix them. And it's just like a business. If I'm sort of put in front of a business and I'm looking at it and everyone's looking at me going, well, fix my business. How are you going to fix my business? Well, actually, I've got to have that middle stage, or else I'm never going to be able to fix that business, or I'm never going to be able to help that person, or I'm never going to be able to push them in the right direction. And I suppose that is what makes me a maverick, because at the end of the day, I apply the same mechanics of strategy to, there are so many articles about, look at a business as a body. And, you've got the brain, the heart, all these kind of things. And actually, to a certain extent, that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm looking at it as being a thing, and then trying to work my way through it. And that is what makes me a maverick, because what I'm not looking for is a quick fix. I'm not looking for a quick hit. I'm not looking for a headline grabbing. What I would rather see is in 3 years' time, we've put together something that is going to last for the rest of the business's lifetime. Then in 3 weeks' time, I can post a big headline saying retention numbers have gone up by 10%. Well, it's the same as the financial markets, isn't it? If Elon Musk turns around and says he's going to buy crypto coin, everyone runs into crypto coin and the thing shoots up. But what happens if Elon Musk sells his crypto coin? Well, everything plummets. That's not what we want. We don't want a peaking and troughing. We want a gradual rise and a flat line from that point forward with slight increases. And I see that in business, and that is for me the advantage of the initiative over it's the advantage of the strategy over the initiative. But the initiatives must happen. That's the point. Without the initiatives, the strategy struggles, because you will need somebody to come in and deliver a training course. You will need somebody to come in and talk to people about X. You will need some things where we go out on sort of staff bond, whatever it might be. All these initiatives can be part of the strategy. I've never seen lots of strategies coming together to make an initiative.
Yeah, exactly. So I love the label you've given yourself of maverick, by the way.
I'll have to get a helmet made up for these sessions when I think so.
I was actually referring to Robin Hood when I was flagging you the outlaw.
Oh, okay, all right. Do I want to be Tom Cruise or Robin Hood?
Exactly. I've got a question for you. Coming off the journey that you've been on, and now what you're doing, you've obviously generated a lot of goodwill and respect and credibility in your field. That's obvious. What drives you? What is that bigger thing that drives you to do what you're doing, that took you on that journey from the point that you failed suicide twice and then everything that you did to get to this point here? Is there something that you can describe?
Yeah, so I said back then, it's that half step forward. And that's the way I've lived my life. So if I can take a half step forward, doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean it's going to be straight. I've desperately been out there working in a space that, effectively is a horrifically difficult space to work in, because we have a lot of rhetoric around we want to do the right thing, but actually we'd rather not do anything than do the wrong, do the right thing wrongly, or whatever, along those sorts of lines. And there's a lot of paralysis in the industry because of the muddied waters and things along those sorts of lines. But throughout all of this, it's been that half step forward. So, first of all, it was where do I want to go next? How do I, there's got to be more than this. I'm not as completely pointless as I think I am. I'm not just here, I still suffer mental health every day. I suffer from depression, I suffer panic attacks and anxiety. And there are some days where I will go and I will hide under my duvet in my bedroom and shut everything off, call my wife, tell her that she needs to take Littleton to school because I can't do it, because I can't face it. These things still happen to me, and they happen to me daily with my headaches and things on those sorts of lines. And anxiety will come up. Anxiety came up before doing this. It's not that you two are massively anxiety inducing, but it's because it's not, it's outside of comfort zone. So anxiety comes into play, and I deal with that, and I understand that. But what I know now that I wasn't convinced of then is that there's always tomorrow. And I cannot do something today and people will understand because I'm honest and I tell them, this is who I am, this is what I do, these are my flaws. Because I have them. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But if people want to work with me, they want to work with me because I'm not perfect. Or because I don't claim to be perfect. Because I don't run around the whole time telling everyone false positives that, just believe in the world and the world will provide, or whatever the case might be. It's not where I come from. It's not my life. It's not my experience. I'm honest. I'm truthful, and I call a spade a spade. But each day it's that half step forward. So each day now I know what I didn't know then was then I lived day to day, and it was, can I survive? Can I survive today? Is there a way of me surviving today? And actually, when you're in that place, that's a very common mindset, and actually, something that people work with. When I started changing, it was because I was looking at what was tomorrow. And even if I couldn't do it today, or I couldn't do it tomorrow, or I couldn't do it on Thursday or Friday, I might be able to do it on Saturday. And, I would go along, and when I could do it, I can do it. And I think that was the big thing for me. It was that sort of understanding that half a step is better than nothing. Nothing has to be achieved overnight. I don't need to make these grandiose, and in a way, that's how I approach my business. I'm not looking for the headline. It's why I don't do podcasts and things like that normally, because I'm not looking for that headline. I want people to find me for who I am and what I've done. And, that kind of, this comes very unnaturally into my way of looking at it. But, if my story in some way shows somebody out there that there is a way, and there is a way to go half a step forward, then actually it's not a bad idea to tell it. And that's kind of how I've approached the situation. But it's that half step. It's that little step. It's understanding that things don't have to come all at once. You don't have to build Rome in a day. We've all heard the cliches, but the world is out there telling us you've got to be a success overnight. Your business, if you're just hanging on, you're not succeeding. So give up. That's not what we're about. The fact is that if you've chosen to come down the entrepreneurial route, or you've chosen to do something for yourself, normally you've done it because of something that you need to get out of it that you've not got doing what you were doing previously. And it's so simple for those around you to consistently go, you know what? Yeah, I had it when I came out of a well-paid job with a good pension and everything else. What are you doing? You're absolutely insane. My mother went off her head. Why are you doing this? What's the... You are absolutely bonkers. And to be fair, for 3/4 of my life doing this job, I think she's probably right. Uh, but it was something I needed, as well as something that I needed to put into somebody else. And we never move forward if we always do the same things in the same way. But that's what we're very good at. We're very good at becoming conformists. We're very good at going down that well trodden path that, well, this is the way you do it, son. You get a career for life, and you stay with one business, and you're there forever. And at the end of it all, they give you a watch, and they pat you on your back, and they send you off, and then you're old. So forget about doing anything fun, because that's the way you should be living your life. And it's like, no, actually, we have so
Yeah.
many opportunities in this world now. The whole concept of a job for life scares me. I
Yeah.
call them portfolio careers, because ultimately what you're doing is you're honing these skills, and then you take them
Yeah.
to the next place that you're going, and you use the stuff but you're using it in a slightly different way, and then you're learning new stuff about working in that. I've worked with businesses from financial through to care, running over into the electronics sector. And I'm talking to one guy the other day about cryptocurrency, and then 3 days later, I was talking to a guy about his crop yield. And you're like, well, you're still getting the same, but I need to adapt. Somebody called me the other day a social chameleon, and first of all, I thought, well, I'm not particularly happy with that. That sounds like I'm putting on a different face to lots of people. And he said, you're not changing your face. The animal you are doesn't change. It's the color of your skin. It's how you're interacting in all these different places and using all that knowledge that you're bringing from all these different areas in the area that you're now in, to try and push them forward into a new place. This is the way for me that businesses grow. But they grow into entities that you can be proud of, rather than becoming a bit of a sellout where you just go back to sort of, oh well, traditionally this is how a business would grow, and I would get this person in, and I would get that person in, and then I would go through a seed round, and then we do this, and then we do that, and you're like, is that really what you want to do? Well, that's what we're supposed to do. So even entrepreneurs, to a certain extent, face this outside pressure to conform to what the expectations are. Who is to tell you what success looks like? That's my biggest question to anyone. You tell me what success is, and I can point you to 100 different people that would disagree with you. Success is what it means to you. If success to you is, I've got 10 clients who I work with, who I passionately care about, who I really enjoy, and I make enough money and I can go on holidays and pay my bills, and da 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 da, phenomenal. And then you'll speak to the next person that goes, well, success is I want to build my own $1 billion empire. Brilliant, amazing, fantastic. Because we're all different. We're all people. We're all individuals. It's about time we started treating people as individuals, as people, and supporting their goals to get them to where they want to go, and conforming around where they're, this pressure to be X, be Y. That's where I was at school. That pressure to fit in, to be part of the establishment, part of the machine, part of what was going on. And then when I went into corporate, to be part of the machine, to be part of the establishment, to then go to university, to be part of the machine, to be part of the establishment, because you needed X and Y and Z. To me, this world isn't like that anymore. This world will be pushed forward by mavericks. It will be pushed forward by, other Western stars. It will be pushed forward by those who can just be happy being themselves. And if you can be happy being yourself, whether you're at work or at home, you've cracked it as far as I'm concerned.
Craig, you've answered a number of questions that I had, and I think you've taken us on this beautiful journey to get to this point. And you've certainly lived the road less traveled, and like everything that you've described about what you believe and what you know to be true comes from your own experience. Like you said, everything you do is about that, and it's about honoring our individual selves and paths. There's just so much gold in what you've said, and I'm just kind of still processing a lot of what you've said, actually. I'm and I'm really grateful for the insights. I think we could have you back on the podcast for another session, and we'll go down another rabbit hole, because there's a lot more we could.
Episode 2 with it. we have to do it.
Part 2. We're going to do part 2 with Craig. So we've gone over time because we had to, but I do want to kind of bring this to a close. Corey, have you got any last questions for Craig?
No, because there's a lot to be processed. I'm just thankful that I have met such a great person like Craig.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful, Craig, that you have been sharing your mindset transformation from an unworthy perception of yourself to become a kind of an inspirational source for so many, probably millions of people out there. And mate, it's a must-have for you to get this out, and we are helping you with that. And hopefully, and there will be so many people inspired by what you do, because you're purely heartedly driven. Yeah, you're a passionate maverick. Yeah, and your success factor is serving others the way you are and being authentic. And that's exactly what Evelyn, myself, and the group of people behind Six Stars are doing as well. So thanks a lot for showing up despite of your anxiety, yeah, which is really brave move. Little step for you, big step for mankind, yeah, I would say.
Oh, this is it.
So thanks
I'm
again.
changing my LinkedIn profile to Passion Maverick now,
Yeah.
but
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I just want to tap into something you said a few minutes ago. And if the listeners have gotten to this point, hopefully you heard it and it was so powerful. The world is going to move forward by more mavericks and people that honor the individual, and that we are not linear. We don't fit into a box. And that's the beauty of life and humanity. And I want to thank you for blazing a trail, Craig, in your industry. And I look forward to championing you and the work you do, having you back on the podcast, but also seeing how you have influenced and impact other people to step into their own maverick role and maverick self. So
fantastic. Be absolutely brilliant.
thank you so much. Thank you, Corey, for being here today. Craig, it's an honor, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.